There are two things to get to know our being. Just two. Know that your human side is totally helpless. The control you're trying to get works against you. Every time you try to be in control is going to bring exactly the opposite of what you want. But why do we want to be in control? Because we feel inside the being is control itself. The greatest force, the greatest power is the being. But the human has one other aspect. Is so caught in wanting control that it fears being vulnerable, which is of course the opposite of invulnerability. So therefore, when you begin to see that the human is vulnerable, and then you see the power that the being has, you begin to glimpse a little bit, at least from reading scripts or coming to Satsang, you say, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to see how all my attempts at trying to be in control, trying to be invulnerable, bring me more vulnerability. So now, am I willing to allow my vulnerability to be, embrace it, enjoy it, and welcome it? Now that is something the human will never do. Never. To allow yourself to be vulnerable. You see? But if you were to have the courage to do that, you go right into the being. It can be a leap. You see? Yeah.
Is vulnerability being totally honest?
No. Vulnerability is not being honest. Vulnerability is simply being fragile. Okay? For example, in class, there are many people who have questions but they don't ask them. They're afraid to be vulnerable. What if I'm not accepted? What if I say something stupid? What if this happens? What if this happens? Okay? So this happens all over. This is very, very common. People are afraid to be, or for example, there's dancing and people get up to dance, but you don't want to be the first. You see, I've seen this happen over and over again in dance halls. You don't want to be the first one. So therefore, you wait for the band to take on a strong heat, people start coming up, and then you get up. Okay, why? Because you're afraid to be vulnerable. What if people look at me? What if I make a mess of things? What if I'm laughed at? Okay? What is the one thing that the ego fears the most?
Being laughed at.
Being laughed at. It just kills it. You see? Being laughed at. It just can't stand it. But when you allow yourself to be laughed at, that's allowing vulnerability to be. Now you're invulnerable. If you can take being vulnerable, you become invulnerable. Do you see how it goes? Right, why? Because you're allowing yourself to be. So invulnerability is allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Okay? Something that the ego doesn't want to do. Something that it fears. So this is why, when you begin to see the helplessness of the human and the ego are both the same. Okay? When you begin to see the human, how weak it is, and how faltering it is, and it's helpless to do anything about it, you give up. The moment you give up, you're in your being. And now you're strong. And if we can understand this dichotomy here, we can understand the dynamics of spiritual growth, spiritual realization.
You have to go through it, and you know, even though you're saying that, you have to come into your own experience.
You have to come. So you keep listening to this for a whole year before you have the courage to do it.
And yesterday, I had an experience yesterday, exactly what you're talking about. The whole day, it started off, I was sitting in meditation with other people in the morning, and I started crying, and I looked like an idiot. And then at work, I was walking around with black stuff caught in my teeth, and I found myself, and there was like this vulnerability. And then next thing I know, I was standing next to people who I felt really insecure, and I allowed myself to feel insecure and just be in that place. But the whole day was something like that. And But there was something that came out of that day
Mm-hmm.
by allowing myself not to make any stories, not to make any excuses, just to be in that rawness,
Uh-huh.
that I came
That
through
is
it.
beautiful.
And it was like,
Is that what brought you here today?
I don't know, something, it was a powerful day.
Yeah.
But it was interesting.
Yes.
But it was just like, yeah,
Yes.
you come into that yourself, though.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah. And then you wonder, now what brought me to that place to actually see it and accept it and allow it?
Right.
You see?
What brings you to that?
Yeah. See, this is called grace. We really can't really understand it. It's grace, but grace. What is grace? You see, always ask what is, because that's how we learn. Grace is this moment, and there isn't a moment without grace. Grace is the being itself. So therefore, if you have heard this often enough, if you have attended often enough, if you've delved into it often enough, something has prepared you. You see? And then grace just happens. Let me read you this. I won't read the whole thing but okay, the first one he says his name, he's from Turkey, but I won't mention his name in case, because I didn't get his permission. I am regularly receiving your scripts through email, and I'm really grateful for them. Until recently, I was not really getting totally what you were telling in those writings, but week after week after week, they have accumulated in my existence. And after a critical experience that I've just had, a video satsang of Gangaji actually, which came after some days of watching Eckhart Tolle's and Byron Katie's videos, some sort of a leap in my consciousness has taken place. I would like to say that your writings have had a huge influence on what I have experienced. They constituted the background for the experience. I'm really grateful for that, because it goes well with what you're saying here. Actually, it was 2 weeks ago that I watched a video of Gangaji called Still in Awareness, and it changed something very deeply in my existence. While watching it, I instantly recognized what she meant by awareness being never agitated by conditions, the ever-present stillness in our existence. It was a moment of grace and silent transmission through the beingness of Gangaji. I somehow recognized awareness as a natural quality which I have always known, but just forgotten or just didn't pay attention to. For 2 days after the video, almost no thoughts arose, and a great bliss showered my whole existence. Nowadays, the thoughts arise as usual, told their drama, but at a deeper level I still feel calm and blissful. I don't know if and how long I'll be able to keep my attention on just beingness, but somehow I feel that even if I get distracted in the coming days, some part of me will never forget the experiences and will remember it as the deepest reality in my existence. And then, by the way, I'm looking forward to reading your scripts in the coming weeks. Interestingly, I have realized that after watching the video I mentioned above, I have checked your previous scripts and some of your Satsang transfer on your homepage, and somehow they sound perfectly normal to me now, and I view things in a very similar way to how you are describing in those writings. It's really blissful. I hope I would be able to keep my attention on pure beingness in the coming days. I would ask you for your prayers, Burt. Looking forward to hearing more from you. Anyway, so this goes well with what we just said. Okay? Yeah. When we keep at it, and we keep driven towards what is real, what is true, what is lasting, and want it more than anything else, then comes a point when, how, where, we don't know. It can come from watching a cat. It can come from going through a park. It doesn't matter. When everything that you have done comes to, all of a sudden, just becomes clear. You see?